Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Open University.
Hello friends, Namaskar. I, Dr. Bhavna Trivedi, an Assistant Professor of English, welcome you all to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University video lecture series. Today, I am going to talk about the metaphysical poets, which is unit number 8 of paper 6. In this session, we will be discussing the definition of the poetry, the major poets, the characteristic of poetry, and finally, to exemplify what the term is all about, we will be discussing one significant metaphysical poem, that is To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvell. Metaphysical is made up of two words, meta and physical. Meta means beyond and physical is related to physics. So metaphysical means anything that is beyond a physical, a natural and normal. Oxford English Dictionary defines the term metaphysical as the branch of philosophy that deals with the nature of knowledge, existence and truth. It was Dr. Samuel Johnson who first came up with this term in his very famous work, The Lives of English Poets, and specifically in the life of Cowley, where he uses this term for the group of poets as the race of writers. Actually, Samuel Johnson has borrowed this term from Dryden, who had once used this term for John Donne, saying that his poetry reflects the metaphysics. This particular group of poets, as Samuel Johnson mentions in his work, that they all come up with new thoughts, but they are seldom natural. Somehow they do not appeal the readers. In that case, they are neither obvious nor just. So taking this particular characteristic, Johnson defines the term metaphysical as this particular poetry reflects the most heterogeneous ideas as they are yoked together by violence. The major poets of this particular group of poetry are John Donne, George Herbert, Andrew Marvell, Henry Vaughan, Richard Crashaw, and Abraham Cowley. All these poets have common worldview with common poetic style and figurative language. Here you can see the image of all these major poets. In middle, John Donne is there, Andrew Marvell, George Herbert, Henry Vaughan, and Richard Crashaw. These particular poets exhibit wit by joining incompatible ideas in order to create startling images. That is what Johnson calls far-fetched images. All of them use unusual imagery and shocking conceits. Conceits are elaborate, surprising comparisons somewhere between very different things like love and religion, physical and spiritual experiences. So, taking this particular characteristic, Johnson says thoughts are new, but they are not natural and they do not represent any obvious and just things. Another important characteristic of metaphysical poetry is all the poetry generally come up with heated arguments, maybe with reluctant mistress or an intriguing friend or God or death or even with himself. So all of them employ subtle and outrageous logic. They use paradoxes to create startling images. One of the important, or we can say the crux of Johnson's criticism lies when he uses one important Latin term, that is discordia conquers, which means unity in variety or variety in unity in the cosmos. By giving this particular term, Johnson says the metaphysical poetry represent harmonious discord. That is, harmony or unity gained by combining disparate and conflicting elements. So this is one of the distinguished contribution of Johnson in criticism, as this particular interpretation of nature is somehow different from what other critics have defined. Johnson says the representation of metaphysical poetry is different in the sense that metrically they fail to imitate the harmony harmoniously, and philosophically they try to make discordant elements concordant by violently yoking them together. Now, to exemplify this particular term, metaphysical, let us talk about one significant metaphysical poem, that is To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvell. Here you can see two images. The second one is all about, the narrator tries to convince his beloved. Very common, love poetry. By seemingly, once you read the poem, you would find as it is love poem. But once you start reading, you find another theme reflecting, and the idea of carpe diem. Again, Andrew Marvell uses, a Latin term to define this particular, idea of time. Carpe diem, here in this image you can see, the letters are written on sand and waves are about to remove the letters. I have written, this particular poem given in 3 different stanzas. I am not going to read this thing, right? It is very much available. So I am directly moving to the interpretation of poem. This is one of the, you can say, significant metaphysical, typical metaphysical poem by Andrew Marvell. The poem is all about that particular narrator who convinces his beloved to follow his desires. One of the best metaphysical poets, we can say, written in 1650s but published posthumously, that is in 1681. Posthumously means after the death of the poet. The theme of love is yoked with connotative ideas of religion, philosophy, and science, and that also with wit and intelligence, and with elaborative figurative language. The narrator addresses his beloved cold and slow responses to his advances, taking time as a game changer. The first stanza comes up with that particular flattery, where he tries to convince his beloved. And says, had he got enough time, he could have loved his beloved in this way and that way. A lot of use of figures of speech you would find. Say for example, in the third stanza, you have one example, youthful hue with morning dew. In the first stanza, hyperbole is there. Love is expressed through number of things, number of ways he could have loved. In the second stanza, we see personification, where loneliness of death is given through in the marble vault. You have another example in the third stanza, where death, or the momentary transitory state of life is given through iron gates of life. The first stanza is somehow longer. The second stanza is shorter than the first one, as the emphasis is on harshness of reality. So there is a transition from, mild theme to very sombre theme. Transition from playfulness to sombreness is found, right, while reading the poem. So second and third stanza will find a lot of unpleasant and frightening and grotesque type of imageries. So the poem starts with playfulness, very light mood is found, but once you move from first stanza to second stanza, there is a transition of theme and ideas. So very romantic ideas are yoked with the philosophical ideas, where a sombre theme like carpe diem, right? That means to seize an opportunity, to seize time, how to make the best of use of time. That is what the fundamental idea of the poem. Now, in the second stanza, there is a one word dust, refers to the decay of both her moral and physical honor. The narrator tries to convince his beloved that you have to, you should make use of your time, because, life is very just like a bubble. We are in a very transient state. So make use of that particular time and seize the opportunity to live life in best of the way. Marvell refers here, when he uses that particular word dust in the third stanza, he uses a 16th century book of common prayer. Again, a romantic poem. The idea of romance is combined with the religious theme that is taken from that book of common prayer, where idea is taken from ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Ultimately, the eternity is all about that dust and ashes. That is what Marvell wants to say. So here, in this way, syllogistic logic is found in this poem. First stanza is all about flattery to beloved. Second is a reminder of mortality with harsh reality. And the third one, the final winning blow, that is the sense of urgency. Right? So in that way, the simple romantic poem, seemingly it is, very common, simple romantic poem. But once you start reading, you would find how heterogeneous ideas and far-fetched images, like images of death and images of that vault, right? That is a grave. Again, Marvell talks about the futility of human life, where he says, how this body is going to be eaten by worms in grave, right? So there are so many conceits, that is far-fetched images of different fields. When Johnson, says that heterogeneous ideas are yoked together, that means different, images are yoked together. Thank you.
स्वाध्यायः परमः